What is up, everyone? This is Cage Unlimited. Welcome back to episode 17 of Spill the Tearal, which is a JRPG podcast where we go over some JRPG news, releases, mechanics, what I've been playing, want to play, and more. And this episode, we're going to be talking about me starting to play Wuthering Waves, Dragon Quest XI, and Trails of Cold Steel Northern War, what Kingdom Hearts ReMake I would want, and there are some Zenless Zone Zero news too. Hint, hint, it's a release date. And yeah, so we're going to be going over that. And before I get into the podcast proper, some housekeeping stuff. Some things I want to mention every time is if you're listening to this episode, please give it 5 stars or kind of rate it highly on any of your podcast apps that you listen to. And if you are on an app that doesn't have ratings, if you can go to Apple Podcasts or Spotify or whatever and give it a high rating, that'd be very appreciated. That is literally the number one way that my podcast is better. And I have no evidence of this. I haven't checked, but like, the last week, the impressions of my podcast went really up, and because of that, I did get more listeners in the audio version. So I don't know if some of you did that. If you did, thank you very much, because that means it literally is working, because I did get more listeners than usual on the audio front. So thank you for that if anyone did do that. And also, I do have a Twitter/X account. It is at Spill the Tearal. If you wanna go follow me there, I talk about random stuff related to the channel, either like me kind of making my videos or the games I'm playing and giving live thoughts and things like that. So if you're interested in that, check that out. One thing I want to mention is that I'm going to be trying something new with this episode, and that is the order of the segments. What I've usually been doing is the housekeeping, and then I go on to what I've been playing, and then from there I go on to the news, release dates, JRPG mechanics, etc, etc. But the thing is that what I've been playing section has been really chunky for a while, and the issue with that is it kind of like front loads the podcast very hard, and by the time I'm done with it, I'm kind of like not tired, but I'm kind of like, I feel like rushing the rest of the podcast, which I'm not doing intentionally. And because of that, the flow of the podcast seems weird. And so what I think would be better is if I put the what I'm playing section near the end of the podcast, just so I can, get through the important stuff, which I'm sure a lot of people are interested in. And then by the end, I can kind of just like really focus on what I've been playing and not feel like I'm kind of extending it too long. The last segment will still be my top list, because I feel like that's just a good way to end the podcast. It's a very casual segment. But yes, I'm going to be trying that for this episode. We'll see how it goes. If I feel like the flow wasn't as good, I might just go back to the old order for the next episode. But we'll be trying that out for this episode. Another thing I also want to mention, which was kind of funny, I don't really have to show this, but for the video viewers, you'll see it on the screen right now, but I decided to make a spreadsheet of what I said I would make a couple of episodes ago, where I wanted to make sure that I never repeat a topic on this podcast. And funnily enough, last week was the first week ever that I forgot to plan out my top casualist segment, and I had to kind of make it up on the spot. And because of that, I did end up actually repeating the segment from like episode 7 or some shit. And so I made the spreadsheet. So I have a spreadsheet of all my, segments that I don't want to be repeated. And so that's the thing now. So I will now cross-reference that if I'm ever unsure, and it'll be easier to keep track of everything there. So that is the thing that is happening now, which doesn't really affect you guys at all, but it does affect me in terms of my workflow. Another small thing I want to mention, which I'm going to be trying to change about this podcast, is very minor. You probably won't even notice it. But in terms of the release date section of this podcast, what I used to do is I used to just name off the release dates and then move on. And then what I started doing is I used to name off the release dates. I used to, like, before the recording the podcast, look into each of them, see what type of game they are, make an opinion of them, and then give my opinion in the podcast. The thing is, that was kind of like lengthening the podcast a lot unnecessarily, and I was putting a lot of time into it, and I don't think that was necessary. So I'm going to stop doing that. The games that are releasing, I'm just going to say the release dates, and I'm probably going to give a log line and not much more than that. If it's a game that I'm actually interested in, I'll talk about it, but I don't think I'm going to go out of my way to really research each of the games that are releasing, because that's just insane to do every week, because a lot of those games I really didn't care about, and I still really took my time to look into it when I didn't really need to, because my findings on them ended up being kind of surface level anyway. So that's something I'm going to be doing starting this episode 2. And from there, I believe I can just go with the recommendation that I usually do, or something cool that I want to show. This week it is going to be a recommendation. It is a manga called Drifting Dragons. So you can see the cover here for video viewers. For audio viewers, it is a guy in a blue uniform with a cool dragon behind him. This is my favorite manga in terms of art, and it is very chill in terms of story. Now, the thing is, I haven't caught up to this in a long time. I used to read it, and then I've kind of held off. I want to kind of let it build up for a while, and I think it's been 2 years since it's been building up, and I got to get back to it. I used to buy it digitally. I started buying it physically, but the art is hands-on beautiful. It's one of those art styles that you cannot replicate into an anime, and that's been proven because they had an anime and they just made it 3D because they couldn't replicate it. But let me just show this double spread as an example for video viewers. It's kind of like this double spread. Hopefully it's in focus. I cannot see my camera, but it's kind of him on one of the dragons just in the sky. His art is just unbelievable. His shading is always through crosshatches. It's never like usually like using like just filling things in. Everything is very detailed. Everything looks beautiful. It's just a very beautiful manga. It's a very chill manga. This shit got me through university when I was going through dark times because it's kind of lighthearted too. And so if you haven't tried Drifting Dragons, try it. If you didn't know, on Amazon you can like try like the first 10 pages of like any book for free. So like do that if you really want to. But yeah, Drifting Dragons is a very fun recommendation. And from there, we will do what we always do, which is starting with a random Spirited Away card. So I will go to a random card. Okay, let's go to this one. Okay, we got the Queen of Hearts. It is, I gotta learn the names of the characters. I keep just saying them generically because I don't know the names anymore. But it is a main girl and the main guy, and the girl is crying, and they're standing in front of a bush, or kind of kneeling in front of a bush. And on that note, we will go to our first section, which it will be different now, which is going to be JRPG news. It feels very weird starting with JRPG news, but yes, the JRPG news for this week. As always, I have sources from Gamatsu, and there isn't too much news, but there are some big news stories I want to talk about. First of all, this isn't technically fully JRPG related, but this was just announced like literally a couple of hours ago from when I'm recording. But on Thursday, May 30th at 6 p.m. EST, which is tomorrow from when I'm recording this, there will be a state of play from PlayStation. It will be 30 minutes long. And their official tweet says, tune in live for updates on 14 PS5 and PSVR 2 titles, including a look at PlayStation Studios titles arriving later this year. And the reason why this is, you know, possibly important is because there could be huge JRPGs here. We don't know. I know some people want Kingdom Hearts 4 to be here. I don't think that's happening. But whatever it may be, PlayStation is usually kind of like the forefront of JRPGs in terms of consoles. I know Switch has a lot of good ones too. And honestly, recently Xbox has been getting some too. So like, we'll see. There could be big JRPGs here. But yeah, I just want to note that in case there is something big there. I don't think I'll be doing a reaction or anything. That's kind of like not my cup of tea. I'd rather just watch it on my own time and just give reactions after. But that is something that is happening. Next news story is Zenless Zone Zero, which is a game that I have talked about how I'm kind of excited about because it is kind of like Genshin Impact, but it takes place more of in an urban fantasy setting, which is very cool. And Zenless Zone Zero has a release date. It is confirmed to be coming out on July 4th, 2024 on the PlayStation 5. So that's like not even 2 months away. It's pretty much a month and some change away, so it's very close. But yeah, that is the Zenless Zone Zero news. And moving on from that, we have some Dragon Ball Sparking Zero news. It is an announcement of a trailer, but I mentioned this that they've been releasing a lot of character trailers, and I also mentioned that I hope that they just keep continuously rolling out these character trailers like pretty frequently, and that's what it seems like they've been doing. And so they've announced a new trailer that is coming tomorrow, so on May 30th, and it's just a character trailer. We don't know what it's about. My guess is it's going to be a trailer about fusions. If you didn't know, the trailers that they've been releasing have been themed. So the last one was like a master student trailer, so they had like Yamcha, Krillin, and Roshi, and they had Piccolo and Gohan, etc. And I think they had one before that too. And so this one, I'm gonna guess it's fusions because they had a tweet I think a few days ago showing off Kefla and Kale and Caulifla, kind of showing that fusion. So assuming that's a tease, maybe we'll see a fusion based trailer, so we can see Vegito, Gogeta, Gotenks, Zamas, maybe Supreme Kai, maybe Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta if they're bringing like GT stuff, and if they bring all those and their individual characters too, this could be a very like nice packed trailer. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, if it's a fusion trailer, that'd be dope, and we'll see how it goes. And it's nice because it's usually not really a big event, it's just really a quick like 2-minute trailer. So yeah, I'm excited to see it, and I'll definitely be talking about it on the next episode of this podcast. And the next news story is Dragon Quest Day happened. I believe it was yesterday or maybe 2 days ago. And it was funny because I'm going to be talking about this later in the podcast, but I started playing Dragon Quest 11 for the first time, and this is the first Dragon Quest game that I'm playing, and I'm loving it so far. I'm like nearly 30 hours into it, and I'm really liking it. And so while I was playing it, I saw tweets that it was Dragon Quest Day, and I'm like, oh, this is cool. And I noticed they started teasing stuff, and now I think it's been official, like what the news is. So the first news story is Dragon Quest 3 in HD 2D is confirmed for PS5, Xbox Series, Switch, and PC. So they were always like teasing this like logo they kept showing that was Dragon Quest related. I know nothing about Dragon Quest, so I thought that might have been like a Dragon Quest 12 teaser or something. But no, it was for the Dragon Quest 3 remake. I haven't played any of the old Dragon Quest games. I have no context for it. But yeah, that is something that's happening. So that's pretty cool, especially that I'm getting into Dragon Quest. I'd be open to playing that whenever it comes out. And funnily enough, the next news story is kind of related to Dragon Quest 12, which apparently was announced in May 2021, which I didn't know. So like I just got into Dragon Quest, so I thought like it wasn't a known thing, but yeah, we've known about it since May 2021 apparently. But the news story is Yuji Horii on Dragon Quest 12 The Flames of Fate. I want it to be worthy of Akira Toriyama and Koichi Sugiyama's posthumous work. And this is very interesting to me because every minute I've been playing Dragon Quest, I'm not gonna lie, I have been thinking about how the future of the series would work without Akira Toriyama. He is the one who's behind the designs. He is the art style of Dragon Quest, and so I was like, now that, the legend has passed away, like, how is it going to work? Are they gonna just replicate the style? But like at the same time, like, he has a certain quirks of how he designs vehicles and characters that, like, I don't know if he can replicate exactly. And so it's very cool to have a statement. And the other person they mentioned was Koichi Sugiyama. I googled it. I believe that was the composer of the Dragon Quest games. And listening to the music of this game, I can tell, like, it's pretty like it has like a certain vibe to it. So I can see, like, now that you don't have the person who was behind the art style and the music, it would be hard to continue, but we'll see how it goes. And it was announced in 2021, which means they started the game a lot longer before that. So assumably Akira Toriyama and hopefully Koichi Sugiyama, I'm not sure when he passed away, but they probably did work on it, and so we will have some of their final works in this game. And so the full quote I'll just read out really quick is, "Thank you so much to everyone for the many Dragon Quest Day congratulations," Hori said in a tweet. "There has been a worry about Dragon Quest 12, but I was actually in a meeting about it until just a bit ago. While I can't share any details yet, I want it to be something worthy of the posthumous work of the two Akira Toriyama and Koichi Sugiyama who passed away. I'll do my best." So it's just nice knowing that he is aware of this and like is kind of like easing the worries of people. And so yeah, I'm just very curious to see how Dragon Quest 12 looks, especially after I finish 11. But yes, and the final news story is about a series called Rhapsody. There is a Rhapsody 25th anniversary collection which was announced for PS5 and Switch, and this is apparently like a classic NIS America game, and apparently it's the Roots of the Disgaea series, which I didn't know about, but I looked into it and it honestly looks pretty interesting. It has like a very nice pixel style, the environments are 3D, and gameplay wise it looked like my cup of tea. It was turn-based and it kind of had like what I assumed Dragon Quest old school vibes would be, and it says it was a Roots of Disgaea, but it was more basic turn-based, which I like because I don't really like how Disgaea is more like strategy oriented, and so it looks really fun to me. I would definitely check it out if you were interested in what I just talked about. But I was also a bit confused about what it exactly is because it's called the Rhapsody 25th Anniversary Collection. I looked into it, but there's already a trilogy like on PlayStation with I think the first 3 games. And so I was wondering what this is, but I think this comes with extra NIS stuff. I kind of looked through the news story real quickly, but I think they, based on like the platforms it's on, you get different stuff. Like I think the Prinny collection, which is kind of NIS America's like classic collection, I think that comes with it too maybe. But yeah, it does come with a bit of extra stuff. But yes, that was announced for PS5 and Switch, which will be coming in the future. And that does it for the JRPG news this weekend. From here, we will move on to the next segment, which is the JRPGs that are releasing this week. So for the JRPG releases this week, I have sourced them from RPGsite.net, and we only have 2 releases, one for May 29th, which is today, and one for May 30th, which is tomorrow. So for May 29th, which is today, is Trails of Cold Steel Northern War, which is a mobile game. And I've talked about how I'm very excited about this game, and spoilers, I have played it. I'll be giving my thoughts later in this podcast. They are not the most positive thoughts, but yes, that is something that I'll be talking about. But yeah, that came out today. And let me read the logline real quick. It follows Lavian Winslet, a girl born in Northumbria, a poor country in the northwest of Zemurian continent. She enlists in the Northern Jaegers, the largest mercenary corps in Zemuria, to protect her hometown, while distinguishing herself from her grandfather Vlad, the renounced hero who betrayed their country. And if you've played any of the Trails games, you know just by me reading this, none of those characters are anyone in the main canon. I believe this is based off the anime, and from what I know about the anime, it takes place, I believe, between Trails of Cold Steel 2 and 3, so it's kind of the time where like Reen is kind of helping out with the war, and I won't say much more than that. But yes, that is a release date that happened today, so if you want to check it out, it's on mobile. The second one is, I'm probably going to butcher this pronunciation, I believe it's Xuan Yuan Sword 7, XUANYUAN Sword 7. It's coming out on the Switch on May 30th. It is technically a Chinese game, and I'll just say it right now, but at least on Steam, it is mixed review, so it is out on Steam already, so take that into account if you want. But Xuan Yuan Sword 7 is an ARPG rooted in Chinese history and mythology. Players take on the role of Taishi Zhao, a calm and reliable swordsman who was accidentally involved in a tragic fate. To protect his beloved family, he starts a journey in this chaotic realm to find the truth. So that was the logline of it. Again, I don't know much more about it. I just want to give you the logline at least, just so you know something about it. And if you want to look into it more yourself, feel free to check it out. It's called Xuan Yuan Sword 7, and it is coming out tomorrow, so this Thursday. And those are the releases of JRPGs this week. And from here on, we're going to move on to the next segment, which is a JRPG mechanic that I think is dope. Now, the JRPG mechanic, which isn't technically a mechanic that I want to talk about, that I've noticed, especially when I've been playing Wuthering Waves, which I'll be talking about later in the podcast, is I very much, especially these days, appreciate when a video game has a main character that is an adult. And I'm specifically bringing this up because there's just a strong contrast between this game and Genshin Impact, because it's very similar. A lot of people are comparing them, rightly so. They are very similar. And one of the main things I remember when I played Genshin Impact, which I didn't like too much, is when you start off the game, your main character seems like he's a kid or she's a kid. I'm not sure what the official ages are. I wouldn't be surprised if they're like actually like 17 or something, but like when you play as them, they look like 13, maybe even like 12 or something, maybe 14. And so that is a thing you see in anime a lot, and I'm sure that's where they got it from. But like, especially these days, like, I don't know, playing as like kids, especially in the stories that you have these days in games, just doesn't sit right with me, especially because it's just harder to suspend your disbelief for these types of games. And so with Wuthering Waves, for example, like, I'm really enjoying playing as an adult main character because not only does he look like 25, the cast of characters so far that I've met all look like they're in the 20s or 30s or whatever, and so the plot that's happening in the game just feels more realistic. Not to go too much into it because I'm going to be talking about it later, but like, some of the plot line has to do with war and being on the front lines and helping out with that, and being a 20 whatever year old, it just makes a lot more sense that people are trusting you to do this as compared to if you were like 15. I feel like no one should be like, yeah, you should go to the front line of the war. It's like, no, he's a fucking kid, don't let him do that. And so having an adult main character, and on top of that an adult main cast around you, I think is kind of like needed for plot like that these days, and I'm so glad that Wuthering Waves is giving that. And yeah, I'm just really appreciating the adult main characters more in games these days. And while I know that like this inspiration of young characters probably came from like shonen manga, I feel like the reason it doesn't work as much in games is because you're controlling them, where like in a manga you're just like reading or like watching an anime and like you're experiencing the story by like looking at them, but when you're playing a game you are them. And obviously I'm coming from the perspective of a 20 something year old, as compared to if a kid was playing this, like they would obviously see it differently. But I feel like even as a kid, like, I know people, like a lot of people say like, oh, the reason like shonen manga or like games they aim towards kids and you play as kids is because kids are playing it. But like, at least when I was a kid, like, I don't think that was a thing. Like, I didn't ever want to play as a kid. I want to play as like a cool adult. Like, that was always a thing. And so like, I don't know if that's like an argument that can really be made. And so even from that standpoint, like, I feel like because we are playing the game, we are almost supposed to imagine that we are the main character in some ways. I just feel like it should be an adult character to make sense in the world. And especially because like, even when anime or manga have like kid main characters, I feel like that's done the best when it's constantly brought up. One example I thought about is Full Metal Alchemist, where I always forget this, but the main character is like, he is a kid. I think I don't know his exact age, but I feel like he is like 13 or something at the start of the story, or maybe even 12, like something insane like that. But the thing is, it is constantly brought up. Like, people do constantly treat him like a kid. They make fun of his height. They don't let him like join the important stuff usually until he starts slowly proving himself, and the story goes on and he becomes older. And then by the end, he's like, I don't know how old he is, but he feels like he's 17, 18, or at least looks like it. And so that's an example where like, he is a kid, but he's treated as a kid. Whereas in some games, I can't really remember an example off the top of my head, but there have been some games or like anime or manga where like the character is clearly like 13 and they're like making him like save the world, and like, it just doesn't make sense. Like, you're 13, bro, like, sit your ass down, let the adults handle this. And so if you do want a kid MC, you better use them being a kid as part of the plot, because like, in no way does it make sense that they're a kid and they're doing like life-changing, world-saving shit, at least not without the support of adults who should be a lot more experienced than them. Like, you know what I mean? On top of that, one more point I want to mention is, I don't think it's a secret, this is kind of obvious, but games like Wuthering Waves, Genshin Impact, and a lot of anime style games, like, they're clearly trying to make their characters look good. Like, if you look at any of the male characters, any of the female characters, any of the whatever characters, like, they are meant to be attractive and provocative. And so the less characters you have that look like kids and are kids, obviously the better it is. I don't think we should obviously be having kids look like that. And so if everyone's an adult, that makes it a lot more clean, it makes it a lot more okay, and it's just like more comfortable in terms of playing it. Whereas like, if you had like 12-year-olds or characters that look like 12-year-olds and they're trying to be provocative, it's like, I don't know about that. And so like, especially coming from that perspective, it's like, make everyone an adult. It just makes everything a more comfortable experience, a nicer experience to actually play, and actually just kind of be more immersed in the game. So yeah, that's why I kind of like prefer adult main characters in games overall. And from here, we're going to move on to the next segment of a JRPG that I would look forward to. Like I mentioned last week that I started doing last week, I wanted to do a version of the segment where I talk about a hypothetical JRPG that I would look forward to, and I'm doing that again this week. And that is, what I want is a Kingdom Hearts remake, and what I want the game to be is Kingdom Hearts Key plus Dark Road. I feel like those games are now important enough where like, the story is important enough in the main series where they should be more accessible in terms of getting the story. And I know, like, obviously it is a mobile game that is technically the most accessible platform in existence, but while the game is accessible, the story really isn't. Like, the amount of hoops you have to go through and the amount of grinding and shit that you have to do to really get the story isn't easy. And then you can recommend YouTube, but the YouTube route, like, a lot of people, unless they're hardcore, are not going to do that. And so especially if they're, getting the story more infused into the main canon, and it is. Kingdom Hearts Key was in Kingdom Hearts 3, and Kingdom Hearts 3 leads to Kingdom Hearts Dark Road, which is like the backstory of the main fucking villain of the main saga, and even that is now leading to Missing Link, which is going to be important to Kingdom Hearts. So the fact that the mobile games are becoming more and more important, I feel like until the mobile games become more console experiences, I really do think they should just remake Unchained Key and Dark Road. I was thinking of just making it like one game because like why not, and then release that on a console and just make it like a mainline game, like graphically, mechanically make it like Kingdom Hearts 3 or whatever. And I legitimately think it's possible because you can't really say this about every mobile game, but like Unchained Key and Dark Road, like they have a lot of fucking story, they have a lot of worlds they go through, there is enough meat there where they can easily make a console game. And like they made back cover, they do have a lot of the assets of Unchained Key. Obviously they're gonna have to do a lot more, but like the framework, I feel like to some extent is there, and just being able to get all that story that for a lot of Kingdom Hearts fans is kind of fuzzy because there's no easy way to access it, and for some Kingdom Hearts fans they might not even know it because they think the mobile games are just mobile games. Having that as a console package, and not only that, it would honestly be a very fucking hype release because Kingdom Hearts Unchained Key and Dark Road is so different from the other Kingdom Hearts games in terms of like the stories they tell and the characters they have, where like I feel like it would be like a pretty exciting and big release. So like having Key and Dark Road as a console release, I think is just like a right move, and hopefully something that does come at some point soon. And my personal kind of hope for the future of the Kingdom Hearts mobile games is, as we do more mobile games, and we're already seeing this with Missing Link, hopefully they just become more and more like console games. With Missing Link, we're already seeing this. The at least visual quality is more like Kingdom Hearts 3. The gameplay is slightly more like Kingdom Hearts 3 with the combat, and especially these days where we have games like Genshin Impact and Wuthering Waves and what have you on mobile, which are 100% console experiences. Like the combat in Wuthering Waves is like better than like 90% of other games that I play on consoles, honestly. And so like you have these full console experiences playable on your phone. There really is no excuse for Kingdom Hearts games not to be able to do that. Like at this point, mechanically you can do Kingdom Hearts as they are on consoles on phones. I have no doubt about that. Would they have to scale the visuals and everything differently? Yeah. They might even maybe can go to a different visual style if they want, but like it is possible for a Kingdom Hearts console level game to be on mobile these days, especially if they go for more of the older style. And so hopefully if they do want to keep doing this track of having very important Kingdom Hearts lore in mobile games, hopefully they just do the route where like it's pretty much a console game but on mobile. And sure, they can have gimmicks here and there, like they're doing the GPS thing for Missing Link, but hopefully we get to the point where it's kind of like a Wuthering Waves or Genshin Impact scenario where it is pretty much the console experience. And one last thing about this too is, one thing I'm not sure how they would handle, and I'm not sure where I would land on this, is the create a character aspect, because obviously Unchained Key was you create your own character, and that player becomes very important later in the story with the reveals that happen in Dark Road. And honestly, I'm not 100% sure how I feel about it, because it just created this very weird like aspect in the story where, without going too much into the spoilers, the player character of the player in Unchained Key is related to someone important in Dark Road. I believe it was something like that. And so like now we always have to be like, okay, yeah, we are related to this character, or like the player is related. Like it's not like an established character, it is just like this kind of like void of what our character should be. We don't know how they look because everyone's character looks different. We don't know their personality really. And so like it's a very weird void where like I wouldn't mind if they did make a remake where our player character just becomes an established character. Like they just have a name, they have a look, they have a personality, and you just play as this new main character, and that's who they are. I honestly would prefer that, but I don't think they would do that because they kind of probably would want to keep the create a character aspect. And so I wouldn't be surprised if they keep it where you create a character and then yeah, it's just like you're part of, the group in Unchained Key, etc., etc. But yeah, that is one thing I just also want to mention, because I wouldn't mind, and I would honestly prefer if they just made your player character just an established character with a name and a personality and visual style, etc. But yeah, and from here we will be moving on to the next segment of what I've been playing. Okay, so for what I've been playing, it is a very chunky section this week. As I mentioned, I have been playing Dragon Quest XI, Wuthering Waves, and Trails of Cold Steel Northern War. And one thing I also want to update from last week is I said that I was playing Star Ocean, the Divine Force, I believe it's called. And I said I was pretty deep into it, maybe 10-15 hours, and that I might keep playing it. I have officially dropped the game. I had mentioned that I feel like the balance of the game was not good, and it wasn't good. I just thought like the amount of grinding you would have to put into it just wasn't worth it, so I've dropped the game. I'm not playing it anymore. And pretty much what I picked up directly after that is Dragon Quest XI, so that is the first game I'll be talking about. Dragon Quest XI is an interesting game because I have tried to play this probably like 3 times in the past. I think once through Game Pass, once through a demo, I think on the Switch, and one's through a demo on something else, I'm not sure. And if you didn't know, Dragon Quest 11 has like a 10-hour demo, so it's pretty legendary, where you can now also like transfer your save to the full game, which is very cool. But each of those times I just fell off at some point because I'm like, it doesn't feel like that story heavy. The gameplay at the time, I'm like, it's whatever, and I just didn't like ever like keep up with it. But I've been playing it now and I'm really enjoying it, especially because the story is actually very good. And the reason I'm bringing that up is because whenever I start a JRPG, I always Google first, is the story of this game good, or like how complex is it, or whatever, blah blah blah. Like is it a good story or is it a bad story or whatever? And I go through Reddit and see what people have to say without giving spoilers away. And for Dragon Quest, everyone always said like, yeah, you don't play for the story, it's for the gameplay. Or they're like, yeah, the story isn't good, but like the gameplay is fun. And whenever people said that, I was like, I don't know if I want to go through a JRPG length game for absolutely no story. Especially because, like, from my memory of the demo, it's not like the gameplay was like that fantastic or anything. But I ended up giving it a chance, especially because on PlayStation it's free. It's just part of the PlayStation Plus collection. And so I gave it a chance. And I was also hesitant because I would have to replay my like 10 hours that I've played in the demo like a few times, but I got through it and I honestly really enjoyed it. And I'm kind of like cheesed that like a lot of people are saying the story's not that good, when I think the story is pretty solid. It's a simple story, but like it's a good story. And funnily enough, I think this is like the only game since Trails of Cold Steel which has reminded me most of the Trail series in terms of it feeling like a grand adventure of going to different towns, in terms of lightheartedness of the world. Like I'm really enjoying Dragon Quest 11 for what it is. So jumping off of that, first thing I want to talk about is the atmosphere of the game. Like I mentioned, it is a very lighthearted atmosphere, which I like. Something that I really like about the Trails of games is when I'm immersed in a game, I wanna be there. I don't like playing a game that has like a dark and depressing atmosphere, because like, why would I want to be immersed in that? And so Trails is a world where like everyone is pretty positive, they're pretty nice, and of course there's bad guys too, but like for the most part people are kind of like good-natured people. And the same thing is with this, where like it's very positive. Like when I entered a random town, the guards were like, oh, welcome in, come stay at the local inn. Like they were very nice. Like I really like being in the world, and so I'm really liking the atmosphere in terms of that for this game. I'm really liking the atmosphere in terms of like the NPCs, where like you can pretty much talk to everyone. There are some people that you can't talk to because they just have speed bubbles on top of them, but I really like that you can talk to a lot of people. Again, it reminds me of the Trails games, where you get to talk to pretty much everyone in the Trails games and get little story bits like that. Another thing I really love, and I never seen a game do this, and I've always wanted to see a game attempt this, but I thought it wouldn't be possible just based on like the meta work that would have to go in terms of logistics of like actually making the game, which is in Dragon Quest 11 every location has like a different type of person in terms of the way they speak. So there's like this French school which has a lot of French sounding people, like they have a French accent. There's another place which has a different accent, and another city which has a different accent, and like every place has like a different accent and they sound different. And I was like, whoa, that's pretty cool, because like usually, at least from my experience, when you play a game, like everyone either has like a American accent or sometimes they have like a British accent or whatever, and it's always just like overall. But this game is like, no, like where you come from, Cobblestone, there's a different accent. Where when you go to the second place, they have a different accent. When you go to the French town, they have a different accent. Like everywhere is like has their own voice, has their own way of speaking, has their own visuals, which I'm finding very interesting and like very cool. And the fact that this game actually did it is like very impressive, because logistically you have to hire voice actors that can do those accents, or like maybe they are from those locations. So I thought that was very cool when I was playing the game. And lastly, just to harp on the little more of like the good naturedness of the world, I thought it was funny that there's actually like bad guys or like monsters in this world that are good too. Like I know that slimes are bad guys in Dragon Quest, but it was funny going to some towns and seeing that there are some slimes that can just straight up talk to you and they're good. So I thought that was funny. And even funnier when you go to the French school, there are straight up other monsters that are just there enrolled in the school and no one bats an eye. There's like this literal zombie corpse monster which is wearing a dress at the school, and she's just there, she's just a student there. And there's other similar monsters that are just enrolled in the school, which I thought was funny. And makes you think like, so are these monsters like I don't understand the ethics of killing these monsters when some of them can obviously become good and enroll in schools, but I thought that was very funny and like good-hearted too. But yeah, in terms of atmosphere, I really love that. In terms of the story, I have some points here. I'm not going to be going into heavy spoilers or anything, but I am 25 hours in. I'm very curious to see how much longer the game is, because I swear to God, I've heard this game is very long, but I'm 25 hours in and it feels like I'm going to like the end game location without giving too much away. And so if I'm 25 hours in and I'm going to the end game location, like how much more could I expect? But at the same time, it's not like I'm doing that much side quests. I'm not sure if that is the thing that also kind of balloons the time, but I've been mainly doing the story. I've been doing some side quests here and there whenever they're on my path. I have been exploring the world a bit. I actually very much love that there's a certain part of the game where you have to collect these 6 orbs, and the game straight up just tells you to find them yourself. They're like, yep, explore the world. like find it yourself. We're not gonna tell you where it is. And like I straight up had to go to every town that I've been in, sail across the ocean, go to new locations, and the only way you know if there's an orb there is if you have this branch that kind of is an indicator of the orbs, and if it glows on your character model, you know you're in the right area. So I thought that was very fucking cool, gameplay wise and story wise, and I really enjoyed that. And a few more things, and these might be spoilery, so if you don't want to know, skip like a minute forward. But I really like how they've been playing with like time and like flashbacks and time travel with the Luminary, where if you find certain roots of the Yggdrasil tree, you can look at the past. So there's been some mechanics where like you get to see flashbacks of characters and find out like who they are and what they've done. But the most like cool implementation I saw of this is finding out that Cobblestone has been razed to the ground, where like we go to Cobblestone, which is the town where the Luminary, the main character, is from, and you're seeing everything in the past. You're seeing yourself as a kid, you're seeing your friend as a kid, and you find out like your grandfather is alive, the one who kind of adopted you, even though we know he's dead in the present. And slowly you kind of find out that it's all fake. But what's weird is you meet your grandfather and you talk with him, and he tells you to, you know, go to this certain location in the present and find this chest, and it's pretty much, it has a letter and it's something related with the story, which I'm not going to get into. But what was mind-blowing is when he goes to find that chest and finds a letter and stuff, as part of the letter, the grandfather wrote, "Hey, you're not going to believe this, but today I met the future version of you. It was wild. I don't know how you figured out time travel, but blah, 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 blah." And they go on with the story. And I'm like, wow, like this Luminary power is very fucking cool, because at first I thought it was just you can see flashbacks, but the fact that he actually time traveled to the past to talk to his grandfather was really fucking cool. And so I'm very curious to see how that goes. And I'm curious to see what happened with Cobblestone. Like, I very much doubt that Cobblestone is just done. Like, they built up the first like 5 hours of the story of meeting your friend and like how she wanted you to stay, and your adoptive mother, and like everyone in the town, and the fact that they're all just gone and dead just seems very like dark to me for this game. So I have a feeling, at least I feel like your friend should at least be alive, because she seemed like she's being built up to something. But we'll see how the game goes. But yeah, Dragon Quest has been very interesting, and I'm gonna end off the Dragon Quest talk with some gameplay stuff. So I have a lot listed here. I'm just going to go through them really quickly. One of them that I like is more games should do this, but whenever you level up in this game, you heal. I fucking love that. More games should do that. Another thing I noticed is that I feel like every enemy in every game should have some kind of indication of what their life is. It should never be just like unknown to the player. And what this game does is that the color of the enemy's name is indicative of the health they're at. So if it's white, they still have a decent amount of health. If it's yellow, they're getting weaker. If it's orange, they're a lot weaker. And then after that, they die at some point. I really like that. I really like that when you're going around in the overworld with your horse, if the enemy is weak enough, you just kind of gallop through them. It doesn't initiate a battle, which is very cool. I really like that there is a 2D town in the game, which is very fucking cool. Something that I didn't even talk about, but you can play this entire game in 2D apparently, which is fucking wild. I haven't done that at all. But there is a town in this game, I won't spoil what town it is, where you are fully playing the town in 2D, which is pretty interesting. So that's a thing that's pretty dope that this game does. And I really like how the mechanics in this game are also justified with spells. So like they have fast travel in this game, but when you fast travel, you're using a zoom spell. You can escape a dungeon in this game, but when you're escaping, you're using an evac spell. So the fact that everything is kind of like justified with actual spells in the game, I thought that was pretty cool. And on top of that, the fact that these spells are free, I actually like they don't use MP or anything, which would really be fucking annoying. So I really appreciate that. One thing I really love is the use of books in this game. So this game has this mechanic where if you go around to bookshelves, if there is a red book, you can pull it out and read it. Sometimes there are recipes for crafting, sometimes it's just random stories. But I really love that you can actually get stories about characters. A couple of examples are, you have this party member called Sylvando. You learn about who he is and his past through these books if you kind of go around and read about them. You have this helmsman on your ship, which is this dude with the mask. I found a book about him and who he used to be in the past, which I thought was really fucking cool. And the one that I love the most, there is a 5-series book about this adventurer. It just is just this dude going on an adventure trying to find this certain item, and how he was on an adventure, then he helped someone at some point, and then he had this choice of finding the item he wanted to or continuing his adventure, and he just ended up continuing his adventure. And the last book ended up with saying, "And by the way, my name is Chalky, the world legendary adventurer," or something like that. And Chalky is actually our adoptive grandfather, which is really fucking cool to see that he was a legendary adventurer, kind of like how we are now. So the fact that this was all just relayed in the books, something I bet is never going to come up in the plot, was really fucking cool. So I'm really liking the book mechanic in the game. On top of that, they also have this mechanic where, other than the books, if you go into rooms, you can open people's closets, which I think is really fucking funny. You can just straight up walk into someone's house, open someone's closet, and get random clothes or ingredients or crafting items or whatever. And what I find really funny is if someone is in the room while you do it, they will react to it. Like, they will be like, "What are you doing? Get out of my house." But you can still do it. It's very funny. But I really like that too. Something that I found out during combat is that it's a turn-based system. So like it's just a system where like you just choose your attack or magic and you do it. maybe like 20 hours into the game, I realized you can actually move during battle, which was very weird because I didn't know that. The thing is, I don't know if the movement actually has any use because like no matter how much I run, I can still get hit even if the bad guy's not near me. The only reason I think there is some use to it because I noticed that the NPC party members sometimes do move to protect other members. So what I've noticed is if like party member D is very weak, I'll sometimes notice party member C slowly walk in front of them to kind of physically block them. So I'm not sure if your position actually matters in the game, but that is something that I know, so you can move in battle, and so that is very cool. Other than that, I think those are like mostly the positive things. Now some negative things I want to talk about. One of the things, this is a small thing, but saving I think in the game takes too fucking long, especially these days where like saving is like instantaneous. You could tell this game artificially lengthens the saving just so they can have a save jingle. Not a fan of that. In terms of the saves in general, it's a very weird system where when you load game, you really gotta make sure you're saving often, because when you load, I believe there's a few options, but pretty much one of the options is that you load from your previous save point that you saved, or you load from your autosave. Now what's weird, and I had to Google this, but if you load from a save point, what it does is you pretty much have to act like it's a teleportation, as in you will teleport back to your save point, but everything you've done since then you still get to keep. So you keep your items, you keep your inventory, you keep your experience. The only thing that changes is that they take half your money as a sort of cost to keeping all your stuff. Or you can just use your last autosave, and if you go back to your last autosave, it is literally like an autosave. So like whatever you got since then in terms of money experience is all gone. So yeah, that is just a thing you have to do, and you gotta kind of balance with, because if you don't want to lose money, you better be putting your money in the bank very often, because that is something that I had to start doing once I started dying in the game. But yeah, that's one thing that is kind of very weird, and I kind of would have preferred just a normal save system that you can do in the pause menu. But yes. Something else is that there is a crafting system, and the crafting system actually very much like, it's very fucking fun how you craft and like the different moves you can do to craft different items. One thing I would have liked for the crafting system is once you craft an item, I would have liked that if you could just craft the same item again for free, or not for free, but if you could just craft it again without doing the minigame. So there are times where I want to make like a helmet, and I can make the helmet for 4 of my party members, but I don't want to craft it 4 times. Like it's kind of annoying to do that. So I wish I could just craft it once, and then I can just, if I have the materials, craft it 3 more times for my party members, even if it doesn't have any of the +1 or +2 benefits. It'd be cool if I could do that. Another thing I'm not a huge fan of is the inventory system. This game is one of those games where like you have an inventory for each of your characters, and you have an inventory which is your total party. It's really fucking annoying. It's very cumbersome, and it's messy for no reason. So like there have been times where I want to use a potion in battle, but all my potions are my main character, so I just can't use it as someone else. Or I do have potions, but they're just in my main bag, and my characters don't have it. So it's very annoying in that sense, and it makes it even more annoying when you're buying stuff, because like when I'm buying potions, I can't just buy 9 potions and just like buy it. You have to buy like, okay, I have to buy 3 potions, put it in this person's bag, buy 3 more, put it in this person's bag, do it again for the 3rd person, 4th person, 5th person, 6th person, 7th person, and then my actual bag. Like it just takes so much more time. It's unnecessary. So I wish they just had like one big inventory that everyone could share, like most games usually do. So that would be nice. And also another thing is, what this game does is in combat you control the main character, and the rest of your party members fight for themselves. And what I learned a bit later is that you can actually control them if you want. So pretty much you can choose the tactics for each of your party members, and one of them is that you can just control them if you want. And I really like that. I really like that there's a choice of wanting to control them or not. I pretty much let them fight the way they want. The only time I actually control them is when I'm fighting kind of like a main hard story boss, because once I started dying on those, I'm like, okay, let me start controlling them and taking the control, in my own hands. And so I like controlling them in the situations. One critique and one thing I don't like and I wish I could do is, if you do want to control someone, you have to specifically go into the tactics menu, choose a character, change their mode to being able to take orders, and then you can control them. And then if you want to change them back, you have to do that again, but make them fight on their own. What's really fucking annoying is if you want to use another character for just one move, you have to do that entire thing just for one move. So like, for example, I have one character who has this very cool healing spell that regenerates everyone's health. I would have loved if I can just press a button, do one move with him, and I'm done with it. Like I don't have to do anything else, and if I can do that every battle. But I would have to go through that entire tactic menu to make him controllable, do the spell, then make him uncontrollable every single time, and that's just really fucking annoying. And so I just end up not using the spell. So that is one critique that hopefully would be changed in a future iteration of Dragon Quest. And that's pretty much it for my thoughts on Dragon Quest 11. I am very much enjoying it. I do plan to finish it. Funnily enough, I was playing it every day, but I stopped playing for the last couple of days because I wanted to play more Wuthering Waves, and that is the next game I want to be talking about, where I have been playing Wuthering Waves. I'm not sure how far I'm into it in terms of hours, because I don't think there's any way to check, but like if I had to guess, like maybe 4-5 5 maybe. And Wuthering Waves, I'm very much enjoying. It is a very fun game. Again, it's like Genshin Impact and the type of game it is. I am enjoying the story more. I am enjoying the characters more. I am enjoying the combat a lot more than Genshin Impact. So that is something, that I am noticing. So the first thing I want to talk about a bit about the atmosphere. Like I mentioned earlier in the podcast, the main character is an adult. I really like that. It just makes everything believable. All the kind of like cast are adults too, so just everything seems more believable and having everything go in a more realistic way. In terms of enemy designs, I'm really liking them in this game. They're called Tacit Discords or TDs in this game. They look really fucking cool. Some of them look kind of like animals. Some of them look like these rock monsters. Some of them are like a mix of like old human tech. So there's one like large robot spider where the main body is a car. There's one small enemy which is kind of like a traffic light. There's one that I recently got which is straight up like a red knight who rides a fucking red motorcycle, which is really fucking cool. And I'm just really liking the enemy designs and the fact that they have kind of plot behind them, which is really cool. In terms of the physical environment, I do think the game looks beautiful. They have like these grasslands. They have this area with like more sakura trees. Even the place like Sea of Flames, which is supposed to be this more desolate, more kind of like brown urban area, I think it does look good. So in terms of like visuals and environments, I think this game really does look good. One thing that I actually really like is that you kind of do constantly get reminded that this is a Chinese-made game. And what I mean by that is, like, if you look at any of the character names, they're all, like, obviously Chinese names. And the reason I like that is because, like, it makes sense that if the game is a Chinese developer, I do want to get a sense of that from your world. And, like, I can see some people complaining, being like, oh, yo, these names are hard to memorize, or, like, I can't remember all of them. But, like, we had, like, every fucking American game has, like, Toms and Georges and Amy's and fucking Karens and whatever the fuck. Like, I feel like it's fine to have, like, a game with full Chinese names, and I kind of like it. It actually feels like I'm in a different community or, like, a different country. Like, it legitimately feels like that, having these different characters with different names. So I'm actually appreciating that as I play the game, and kind of learning the pronunciations of them are kind of, like, interesting too. So I am actually enjoying that aspect of the game too. And small things like seeing computer screens in the game is very fun too, because there are certain locations where you can find computer monitors, and if you read them, they straight up have like Reddit-like chats of people talking, and I actually have like a fun time reading through them because it literally feels like they just ripped it off Reddit, but it's about like the game's plot, so I thought that was very fun. But yeah, the atmosphere of the game has been very cool so far. And in terms of the story of the game, I've been enjoying it very much. I'm not going to be going into spoilers of the story, but pretty much roughly it is, you are this character who was brought into this world. A couple of people found you. We don't know who we are. We lost our memories, but based on the hints of the story so far, it seems like we may be connected to, or we may be someone that was important in history that helped this city that you're kind of in now, and like we're trying to figure that out. But yeah, it's very cool. And what's very interesting is that, like, I've talked about in the past that I do not like main characters that don't talk. It's just kind of more annoying when it's like that. And he doesn't talk, but it's one of those games where it's like East, where like he actually does talk in universe. It's just that he's not talking for us. But what's funny is that he actually does talk randomly throughout the game sometimes too. So like a lot of the cutscenes, when you're choosing prompts for him to speak, he'll just be nodding his head and he won't be talking. But then randomly he'll just be given a full like dialogue between a character, and I'm like, oh shit, okay, so yeah, he does have like a voice, he does talk. And there's even like this one specific dungeon where like he's doing it alone, and like throughout the entire thing he is literally just like voicing his opinions and talking out loud and like giving thoughts on like the dungeon. I'm like, this is really fucking cool, not only to hear his inner monologue, but to actually hear his voice actor saying it and like actually getting a feel of his personality, which I really appreciate. So really liking that in terms of the story too. I touched on this a bit before, but the TDs, or the Tacit Discords, which are the enemies of this game, I really like that they seem well thought out. I really, for some reason, like to focus on the enemies of games in terms of design, but also like how important they are. Like, for example, this isn't like, I'm not talking shit, but like Dragon Quest, like, because I just talked about it, is like a game where like the monsters just seem like monsters. They just seem like animals of the game, and that's fine. That's just cool, but that's what they are. In this game, like the enemies actually seem like specific enemies. They seem to have like a reason why they exist. They seem to have some plot reasons that the game is kind of getting into too. So I'm really appreciating that the game is putting a focus into that aspect of the enemies. So I really enjoy that. And also, I'm enjoying the plot overall so far. It's like I'm not able to expect what's happening. We're meeting different groups where like I'm kind of working for the city in a way, but there's this other group that they introduced called Fractidus, which is kind of like the enemy group. And that group introduced this character called Scar, which is really fucking cool. He's supposed to be a bad guy, but I'm honestly really enjoying his character because he doesn't really seem that bad, like in a way, like the way he talks to me. There's like this specific mission which I'll talk about, which is, I believe it is called Chi Chi Village, where you're supposed to investigate what happened in the village, because like there's no one in the village and it's kind of destroyed, and your natural instinct is to be like, yeah, Fraxidus, this organization is the one that destroyed it, and you'd investigate a bit, and that's the conclusion you come up to. But at some point Scar comes and he's like, what do you think happened in this village? And like, as your character, you're like, yeah, Fraxidus destroyed it, and he's like, nope, that's not near the truth. And then he literally forces you to reinvestigate the town and come up with a different conclusion, which I thought was really fucking cool. And I'm still not really clear what happened in the town, because he doesn't really give you a clear answer, but like the conclusion was very different than like what was initially assumed. So that whole like investigative mission I thought was really fucking cool and really gets you to know Scar on a deeper level. But yeah, story overall, I'm just really liking this game. And in terms of gameplay, I mentioned this, combat is really fucking cool. I really like the high speed combat. You get to switch between characters like Genshin. You have these intro and outro skills where like when you enter as a character or leave as a character, it does a certain skill. I don't really understand it too much yet, but I know that is a thing. You have like these ultimates you can do with characters. I think the coolest part of the combat by far is when you kill an enemy, you have a chance of the enemy's echo remaining, which is kind of like this hologram. And if it does, you can absorb it, and then you can literally transform into the enemy and use that as one of your own. So there's like this large rock golem that I had, which I killed at the start of the game, which I've been using, and I pretty much get to transform into it. It doesn't move, and then you transform back into a human. And you get to do this with a lot of enemies, like that car spider I talked about. I absorb that. I can turn to the car spider, do a spin attack, and come back. And recently in the story, you fight this red knight that rides a red motorcycle. You actually get to absorb that, and so he is an enemy that I can turn into now, which is really fucking cool because he's very dope. So this entire mechanic of being able to turn into enemies is just very interesting and very cool to me. So yeah, I'm really liking that about the combat so far too. But yeah, the gameplay in general I'm really liking. It's an open world game. I've been surprised with how much there is to do in the world, because not only is like there's side quests for you to do in the world, but there's been random puzzles littered throughout the world too, where like I found like this magnetic floating box and I had to hit it along these rails to get it to a certain location, and when I do it I get a treasure chest. There's been another one where I have to lift objects and put them on pressure plates and I get a treasure chest. There's been like these random like item things in the air where like if you kill the enemies around it they unlock, and I get it. And there's so many like that. Like I'm talking about like there's like ones where you get to pick up explosive objects and break stuff, and if you find these certain like pillars and unlock them, then they unlock another treasure chest. Like there's so many different types of things you get to do in the world where it never really feels like I'm bored when I'm just walking around in the world, which is very important, because this is one of the games which I don't really like when games do this, but if you want to continue getting the story, you have to continuously play the random side content and increase your world level, or in this game it's called the Union level. So for example, when I was about Union level 8 or 9 and I finished the story mission, they said like if you want to continue the story you have to get to Union level 14, and to get there I literally had to play for an entire day doing side content. So like doing side quests, doing daily quests, getting random treasure chests, blah blah blah, and after an entire day of playing, then I was able to make it to Union 14. And what's annoying is they had some story. It was really fucking good story. But after that, now I have to get to like Union like 21 or some shit, which is like an insane amount to like get to. But that's the type of game, mobile games are, especially these types where like they have to kind of drip feed the story. It sucks, but the bright side of that is it is forcing me to kind of do side quests and kind of learn about these new characters. There are certain types of side quests which are called companion quests, which kind of let you get story about different characters that you get to play as if you pull them from the gacha thing. And so I'm really enjoying that. That was very fucking cool. Very good story about a character called Ling Yang, I think, which is very cool. He's kind of like this beast guy. So I thought that was very cool. In terms of side quests, I've very much been enjoying them. They've been like properly written. There's one side quest about this sister who's just like climbing a mountain and you help her through it, and she kind of like just thinks about life and a relationship with her sister. That was very cool. There's another one about this dead musician where you kind of find his apprentice and a girl who looked up to him, and them kind of grieving over his loss, and you kind of help them get over it. That was really fucking cool too. So the side quests and the companion quests and like the explorer quests, whatever type of quests in this game that aren't the main quests, like they're doing a lot of heavy lifting too. So like even though that you have to get the Union level up to a certain amount to continue the story, I think the game does a good job of there being enough side content where you don't really feel bored and you kind of want to play all this other side content too, which is really good. And there's a lot more I want to talk about, but I don't want to go into it too much. But the last thing I will talk about Wuthering Waves is the maneuverability. I think the maneuverability is ace in this game. It's really fucking cool. You have your grapple, but you can kind of grapple in the air just to boost yourself a bit. If there's certain grapple points in the air, you actually grapple very far and can keep using infinitely as long as there's grapple points. And the thing that I love the most is that you can run up anything in the game. So it's kind of like Legend of Zelda where you can kind of, use your stamina and climb up a wall slowly. But if you want, you can straight up just run up the walls. You can vault over walls, up roofs and shit, and it all works very nice and seamlessly. And yeah, I just really enjoy it. It plays almost exactly like Spider-Man, minus the web swinging. And even then, you kind of have loose web swinging with your grapple hook. And on top of all that, you can glide too. So in terms of maneuverability, traversing, it just feels very good to play, and I just have a fun time just literally running around the world. And on top of that, I guess I should mention too, the actual controls. It's a mobile game, so you have to get used to touch screens. For some reason, they don't have controller support on mobile, even though they have controller support on the PC release, which is very weird. I played both. Controller support, I think, was very good on PC. I was surprised with how good it is. But with mobile, I personally don't have a problem with it. I know a lot of people complain, but like, to me, it just plays fine. It's not an issue, maybe because I have a big phone. I have the 15 Pro Max, and so it was fine with me. It is a bit hard for more intense boss battles, but like, at least for now, for where I am in the game, the touchscreen has been completely fine for me. But yes, that has been my experience with Wuthering Waves. Very much enjoying it, and hopefully, honestly, I want to play it after I'm done recording this, while I wait for my footage to proxy. But yes, and moving on from that will be the last game I've been playing. This is going to be a lot quicker, but it is Trails of Cold Steel Northern War, which is the Trails of Cold Steel mobile game. I've talked about this in a past episode where I'm very excited about this mobile game, and unfortunately, it is very disappointing. Honestly, it is clearly a very low budget, shittily made, low quality, very, very mobile game in quotes. Where like, it honestly in some ways even gives me the vibes of like those kind of random mobile games you'll see on Instagram ads, which are kind of like shitty looking. And so like, it's weird because in some ways it's very cool. Like the actual like models in combat look really fucking good. Like they look very nice with how they look. But okay, let's start with the combat. The combat in this game is just bad. Like you literally don't do anything. You pretty much set where your characters are, and you press play, and you just watch the battle happen. The only thing you can really do during battle is use your S-crafts, which are kind of like your ultimates. But even then, I've realized it's better to just turn on automatic and let that happen automatically, because what was happening to me is there were points in the battle where I would get my S-craft, and before I can even press it, my character would die, and so I would just not be able to use it. And so like having auto S-craft on is actually more useful because they can choose the S-craft right away before they die. And the only other thing that I've noticed you can do is that you can change the target of your character if you want. I'm not doing that, I'm just letting it be auto, but you can, if you want, have certain characters target certain enemies, and you can change that throughout the battle, which is one thing. But the thing is like 99.999% of the time, like I'm not doing anything, I'm literally just watching the game, and so like it does not feel like a game you're playing, which is unfortunate. At least based on the gameplay I saw, I thought it was like a turn-based game, but I guess I was wrong, where like you're literally just watching the battle unfold, which sucks. And on top of that, what that means is if you're ever in a battle and you die, it doesn't ever feel like, okay, what can I change in terms of my strategy? What can I do different here? It literally, what I end up doing is just like, okay, what can I do to power up my character? I increase their level by using my currency, then I go back in the same battle and beat it. That's literally all it's been so far. Will that change in the future where maybe I do need to play around with the targeting options more? We will see, but as of now, like, it is kind of disappointing in terms of the combat. And even from there, if you kind of like not even look at the combat, in terms of the actual app, it is very low quality. The UI is very bad. It seems like it's done by a dev studio, which is like not good in terms of polish. Localization is very, very iffy. A lot of typos in the speech bubbles, a lot of inconsistencies with names. If you play Trails of Cold Steel, you know there's a character called Duvali, and on the poster where it says to pull her, it calls her Dewberry, which I'm like, I know how the Japanese characters work, I know how that can be pronunciation, but like, come on, there's official names. Thankfully, after I pulled her, they did change it to Duvali, but that's what I'm saying. There's inconsistencies. There's a character that's called Ivano, sometimes they call him Ibano. There's a character called I think Tuck, they sometimes call him Tak, like T-A-K instead of T-U-C-K, like very little things like that where there's like, why do you have these inconsistencies? Like, it seems like they had different localization teams, localized different aspects of the game, which is very weird. So localization, low quality, UI, low quality. They have like anime cutscenes that play sometimes, absolutely zero subs. There's no translation. They don't translate the text in it either, so you straight up don't know what's happening. Funnily enough, even the anime cutscenes seem low quality. Like, I don't know if they pulled straight from the anime. I hope they aren't, because they just look like shit sometimes. But yeah, in terms of like a lot of the game is there is a trend of it being just very low quality looking and feeling, which is highly unfortunate for an IP like Trails. I thought they would get better treatment, but that is the game so far. I guess the one like positive in quotes, because I'm not sure if it's a positive yet because I'm not that far into the game, but like the story does seem to kind of hold my attention so far. If you don't know, it takes place, if it's like the same as anime, after Trails of Cold Steel 2. I think it is because they're talking about like certain political things where like Crossbell has just been annexed by Erebonia, and Erebonia is at war with Calvert, and I do remember that is happening after Trails of Cold Steel 2, and they keep referring to certain characters that we do know. So they talk about like I believe a Purple Lightning, which we know that is Sarah, which is like the teacher of the main character of Trails of Cold Steel. They mentioned that they took over Crossbell because of this single soldier, and I believe that is the main character of Trails of Cold Steel. And so they are, referencing certain aspects of the main series. I kind of hope that they do bring in the main cast at some point. I don't know if they would, because I don't know how that affects the canon, but like at least from like this original crew that they've added, I don't really care for them too much. The main character Lavi seems like whatever. She barely has a personality. She honestly just seems like a reskin Fee Colossal from like Trails of Cold Steel. The other characters, their designs are like okay, their personalities are like okay, and so the story in terms of like what's happening is kind of interesting, but the characters aren't pulling me in. But yeah, overall, I do have like more notes, but like it isn't really worth going through them. It's just like more specific stuff about the games, or like how the pulls work and things like that. But overall, the game is slightly disappointing. I'm trying to force myself to keep playing, so even this morning I was playing it. I was just like, watching the battles unfold and trying to go through the story. But if at a certain point I get to the point where I'm not able to continue the story due to a battle being too hard, and it's not easy for me to upgrade my character, I'm probably, unfortunately, going to drop it, because I was very much looking forward to this Trails game when I found out about it, because Trails of Cold Steel on mobile would be perfect. They have the cast for it, they have the world for it, but at least from what I played so far, the quality of the game is just like really low for what it is, which is unfortunate. But yeah, that was my experience with Trails of Cold Steel Northern War. If you want to try it out for yourself, check it out. It's on mobile. But yeah, from here we are going to end off our podcast with the final segment, which is our JRPG top casual list. And to end off this episode, we're going to be talking about our JRPG top casual list. And if you're new to this series, this is a segment where I go through a top list casually. So I'm going to be giving a top list topic and then just giving you the top 3 right away and give you some notes about it if I really want to. So this week I'm going to be talking about my top, in quotes, Monster Collection games. And the reason I put it in quotes is I thought it was funny that in Wuthering Waves you can technically collect monsters, so it low-key kind of feels like a Pokemon game. So I thought it was funny if I add that to the list. So spoilers, that's going to be on the list. So my top Monster Collection games are, at number 3 I have Temtem, at number 2 I have Wuthering Waves, and at number 1 I have Pokemon, and specifically I just put Pokemon Emerald because that is my favorite game. So number 3, Temtem, if you don't know what that is, it is a very good monster collecting game that is, I think it's on everything now, like it's on Steam, it's on PlayStation. I believe I backed them. I think I backed them in the Kickstarter days, I'm not sure, but I was playing it very early on. It's a very cool, high quality, very polished, very good story monster collecting game. I'm not caught up on it, I haven't played it in a while, but I've always think about it, going back to it, because it is a game that I very much did enjoy. The monsters are designed very well. You can play the entire game co-op with someone, so instead of having a team of 6, you can have a team of 3 with someone else having a team of 3 and go through the game like that, which I thought was pretty cool. But yeah, Temtem is a very cool game. At number 2 we have Wuthering Waves. Again, this is just kind of for the memes, because Wuthering Waves you could technically collect the enemies and transform into them, so it kind of feels like a Pokemon type game. And so yeah, I just put that at number 2. No need to speak more about it because I talked about it a lot in the previous segment. But yeah, Wuthering Waves, a very cool game where you can fight enemies, absorb them, and become them. And yeah, you just have a team of 5 monsters. Apparently you can attach 5 monsters to each character. You can only transform into 1, I think, based on what I can tell, but yeah, that is something you can do in the game. And at number 1 we have Pokemon, or Pokemon Emerald specifically. Not much to say about this. It is Pokemon, we all know it. It is the monster collecting game. It is very enjoyable, I like it. And Pokemon Emerald was the first one which I really fucking like loved the story of. Leaf Green was my first Pokemon, I love that too, but Emerald for some reason kind of hit harder for me. But yes, number 3 Temtem, number 2 Wuthering Waves, and number 1 Pokemon Emerald. And from there we will end off episode 17 of Spill the Tearal. Looking at the time, this is one of the longer episodes. Hopefully I can cut it down so it isn't too long. And hopefully you guys enjoyed this new order of the episode. So I kind of did the what I'm playing section a lot more at the end of the podcast. Honestly, I think I prefer it this way. I think it flowed more naturally. Like, it didn't feel like after I was done the segment that I had so much more of the podcast to do. It felt kind of like cathartic, where like when I was done talking about what I'm playing, I just had to do the casual top list and the podcast is over. It just feels very good. So yeah, hopefully you enjoyed this new order of the podcast. If you liked this episode and you're watching on YouTube, remember to like it. That would be appreciated. If you're new, remember to subscribe. If you don't want to see my face, listen to me on audio services. It is called Spill the Tearal. And if you are listening on audio services, remember to leave a 5-star review. I would appreciate it. Remember, I'm on Twitter too, @SpillTheTearal. And hopefully I'll see you guys next time for episode 18. Peace.